Oregon football got a big weekend of recruits coming into Eugene. So who does Dan Lanning and company have rolling through Autzen and the University of Oregon campus? Tell you who those guys are today. Plus, Oregon basketball needs 4 wins to get into the tournament. Now they just need 3. They knock off Oregon State, recapping the win against the Beavs on Locked On Ducks. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view on YouTube every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks every single weekday. Like and subscribe to the channel if you're listening and or watching the show right now. If you have not already, nice reviews, nice comments. Always love seeing those. And if you want to get a question answered here on the show, tweet with the hashtag AskLODPod, DM me at Smalls_55. You can see that below, or at Locked On Ducks. Make sure you're following along with the show to stay up to date with it. Today's episode brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, Oregon football, big weekend coming up. Big weekend. Recruiting is such a grind. You know, that's why guys like Chip Kelly or Dan Mullen had these rumors swirling around a few years ago when he was wanting to get an NFL job and he was at Florida. Not everybody's into recruiting. And it's just not for everybody because it is a lot of work. It is a real grind. And we all know that recruiting matters in college football. That's why we follow it a lot here on the show. And, you know, every show talking about their teams, you follow recruiting because this stuff plays heavily, not just into the preseason rankings, but at the end of the day, a lot of the top teams had a lot of the top recruiting classes. That's the way that college sports tend to work. I think more so in football than in college basketball, but it's true in college basketball as well. You get the best players coming out of high school, tends to work out pretty well. I mean, check out the previous administration, for example, Cristobal and company. It's not very hard to make the case that they won a lot of games solely because they had better players than the other team in the Pac-12. I mean, there were a number of days, especially I think when Marcus Arroyo was there, they were not out scheming the other side, but they were just out manning the other side. They just had more dudes, more playmakers, more guys who were elite level athletes, had better instincts, whatever adds up to those recruiting rankings. They just kind of out recruited the other side and won before game day even came. I think that a lot of fans, a lot of Duck fans feel that way. And you have to be fully committed to recruiting to get to that sort of level where you can just win because you look back and say, boy, I think we just had better players. It takes a lot of work, and Oregon hasn't been a top recruiting power for really a very long time until now. Cristobal and company changed that. I think Dan Lanning and this staff, they appear to be all in on it, which I think is great because it makes your life a lot easier. Oregon was able to win at an insanely high level, get to a national championship game or two with an all-time great scheme coach in Chip Kelly and then an all-time great player in Marcus Mariota. But if the Ducks are going to get back there again, the odds you will find a coach or a player like that not as likely as a staff's ability to just recruit at a high level, which is what I think we've got here with Dan Lanning and company, which is great. So there's a lot of guys coming this weekend, and I just want to go through who they are because most of you probably haven't heard all these names, but in the coming months and or frankly year, because these are class of 2023 players primarily, you'll hear these names get thrown around a lot. So it's good to know who they are and where they come from. Who are these guys? I'll tell you after I tell you that Stat Hero is all about it. I mean, when it comes to fantasy, they're very unique. And I love March Madness. I love filling out brackets. I will fill out brackets again this year. But I can't remember the last time I actually went deep or even won any money. I'm hedging my bets this year with Stat Hero's NCAA Pick'em contests. Stat Hero's NCAA single game Pick'ems pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Start focusing on the players you know best with a gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. Stat Hero is the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fix. Simple, sleek gameplay will have you playing in minutes. This is what daily fantasy was meant to be. Check out Stat Hero today. So let's just go down the list, right? Keep it simple. Want to do the ad read there early so that we could just go through the list, no interruptions here. So this is in no particular order. These are all highly rated guys for their own reason, but there's a lot coming, or these are all coming this weekend. I mean, this is just going to be a busy time. There's no offseason in college football, right? I was just saying recruiting is a grind. This is what I'm talking about. It is March. It is college basketball season, but it doesn't feel that way if you're Dan Lanning and everybody else on this staff. So, Mateo Uiagalelei, considered by some places the most coveted defensive line prospect in the country. He's class of 2023 from St. John Bosco in California. USC is in on him. There are some other schools interested, but he's coming from the West Coast. And remember what I talked about with Jaleel Florence weeks ago. For those of you who have been with me that long, if you are a little bit newer, I will recap very succinctly. In the coming years, with Lincoln Riley at USC, Dan Lanning at Oregon, coming off the momentum from a recruiting standpoint in the previous administration under Mario Cristobal, these are the sorts of battles we should come to expect. And this looks like it's going to be another one. Mateo Uiagalelei is a really highly rated player. He's a 5-star defensive line recruit. No surprise that Dan Lanning is going there. You would think, you would hope that Oregon would have the edge with a defensive head coach for a player like this, but it's not as if USC is going to completely ignore the defensive side of the ball. Though Lincoln Riley sort of did at Oklahoma, and it worked out okay. They produced a couple players to the NFL. Kenneth Murray, one of them, Chargers linebacker for our good friend Justin Herbert up there, but he doesn't focus on that side of the ball. He's more likely to bring the offensive guys. Hopefully, this is somebody Oregon will be able to get. And there's no timeline really on when these guys are going to commit. They're class of 2023, so. And that's just the wild thing about recruiting. Dan Lanning and the staff are at the same time getting ready for the spring game, focusing on the fall season, thinking about how they're going to do this way and that way, and how do they want to run this? How do they want to do that? At the same time, they have to be thinking about next year's class. I mean, the amount of roster management you have to do up and down is really ridiculous, but it's just the way that it is. And this staff, like I said, they're all in on it. That's where the resumes indicate their bread gets buttered. And so we'll see how many of these guys they're ultimately able to land. Another guy in town this weekend, 5-star defensive end from Lincoln High School in Washington, Jayden Wayne. Now, both Wayne and Uiagalelei were in Oregon in January, so this is another visit. So hopefully they're starting to get a feel a little bit for what Eugene is like, and we've seen that a couple times. I've seen pictures of Dan Lanning giving fly fishing lessons to Justice Lowe and some other players as well, which is just awesome. That's some good wholesome content right there for us as fans. So, couple of big time names on the defensive line, and no Kayvon Thibodeau anymore. That's a position of need for Oregon going forward, particularly on the edge. These are both edge guys who I think are have the caliber. Well, Uiagalelei might be a little bit more versatile, but Jayden Wayne is a defensive end. He's a stand-up defensive end, kind of in that Thibodeau mold. Don't think he's quite that coveted of a prospect, but he's a 5-star defensive end. He's got the physical traits, no doubt. Riley Williams, 4-star tight end from Central Catholic High School in the Portland area. His older brother, Corbin Williams, is a receiver on the Ducks right now. Haven't talked about him a lot. He hasn't been rising up the depth charts very high, but he's on the roster, and that can always be an advantage when you have your brother there sometimes. And I'll get to this a little bit later. There's a pair of brothers Oregon's going after right now, but there's another name that Oregon's having to campus this weekend, Jayden Osberry. Highly rated 4-star. He's got like a 98 or so composite rating, so just on the cusp of being a 5-star on 24/7. He's a linebacker, recently visited LSU, and his brother goes to Auburn. So that one, and a couple of these, frankly, are a little bit more of long shots for the Ducks, but I like that this staff is swinging for the fences. I mean, go for it. You're not going to be able to compete with the teams that win national championships if you can't bring in those sorts of players. And you can't bring them in if you aren't trying to get them interested. So even though Oregon certainly is not going to get all of these guys, they probably aren't going to get most of these guys in the long run. But you put enough feelers out there, and hopefully you get a couple of fish to bite on the line, so to speak. And then before you know it, you got some trickling in to the university and the program, and they're elevating the level of product that we see on Saturdays. Another guy out of the state of Arizona, Kyler Casper, 2023 4-star wide receiver. When the calendar turned over to 2022, this guy has seen a lot more offers a decently rated 4-star. I don't think he's in the 98 range, but a lot of big name schools, 25 in total, have made an offer to this guy. And he's from the state of Arizona. And he actually recently visited, not that long ago, with Cole Martin, who is the only current commit for the Ducks in the class of 2023. He's a cornerback out of the state of Arizona. So maybe there's a little bit of an advantage there. And, that certainly worked out with Jalil Tucker. I don't think that they were teammates, at least not that I know of, Casper and Martin. But, Tucker and Florence were teammates, and Tucker stayed committed to the Ducks. Certainly helped when his teammate was wanting to come along. So maybe that'll be a fortuitous situation there for Oregon. Dalen Austin, 2023 cornerback from the SoCal area. Darius Curry, 2024 quarterback from Long Beach. He's also visiting the Ducks this weekend. All of those guys are going to be on campus. You talk about an all hands on deck affair. That's what recruiting is. So that's the list of future prospects. There's also a couple of guys for class of 2022 that are going to be on campus this week as well. Like I said, this is a massive weekend for Oregon, not just for the immediate future with the guys I'm about to tell you about, but for the long distance future as well. Like, it's just, there's a lot of guys, lot of guys rolling through. Class of 2022, Mitchell Agude is on campus this weekend. If you listen to the show every day, the defensive end transfer from UCLA. He's got 1 year of college football left. I want this guy, especially if, you look at guys like Jayden Wayne or Mateo Uiagalelei. If you're able to get one of those who come in and have a high impact at the defensive end position, in the meantime, until those guys can get on campus and establish themselves, sometimes you just got to have players who can plug holes. And I think Mitchell Agude can do that. I love his motor. I love his size. I really like what I've seen from him on film, and he fills a need. So hopefully he has a good visit as well. These next couple are reported to be visiting, but not confirmed. I was reading this article on Sports Illustrated. It's where I'm sourcing these names from. Again, I'm not a journalist, just an opinion guy, talking head, if you will, here on YouTube, wherever you're listening on podcasts. So Josh Connerly Jr., again, this is reported, not confirmed. 2022 5-star offensive lineman Josh Connerly Jr. from Rainier Beach, Washington, has got warm interest from Oregon, USC, Michigan, Miami, and Oklahoma. He's narrowed it down to 6, and you expect that from a guy who's that highly rated and is in this class of 2022, could enroll in Oregon in the fall if he commits to the Ducks. He's one of the highest rated recruits that's still out there for the class of 2022. So Dan Lanning and company surprised us all, I think, by getting a top 25 caliber recruiting class. I wasn't expecting that. I was ready for something way worse. I was not going to feel that differently about it. Instead, I was just pleasantly surprised in a great way to see that Oregon was in the top 25. It's just a testament to how on the ground, committed to the grind this staff is with recruiting. If they could pick up Josh Connerly Jr., that would do a lot, especially when this class lost Kelvin Banks when Cristobal went down to Miami. That would that would feel nice. There's no doubt about that, but a lot of other schools interested. We'll see how that goes. Then I was talking about brothers earlier. There's a couple from the state of Georgia. They're from Alpharetta, Georgia. The names are Lebbeus and Micaiah Overton. Now, Lebbeus is the younger brother, I believe. No, excuse me. Yes, Lebbeus is the younger brother. So he reclassified to the class of 2022, and then Micaiah is the player who's currently at Liberty and is a solid player, but they're sort of seen as a package deal. That's according to Sports Illustrated. So if you get one, you probably get the other one. We'll see how many of these guys. I mean, Oregon is also pretty low in the scholarship department. So now they did free one up when Jalen Davies left the program not that long ago. Maybe that'll help, but we'll see how many of these guys end up committing in the future. But that's just the run through of who those guys are. They're all 4- and 5-star recruits, the sort of guys that we should expect this Oregon staff to be going after to come to the Ducks to get this program to where we want it to go. How did Oregon basketball do against Oregon State? All right. Could have been better. I'll tell you why. But first, I want to tell you that March Madness, only a few weeks away, only about 1 week away. This show is dropping on Thursday. So a week from today, if you're listening on Thursday, there will be first round games. And what a glorious time it is. That means you need to start thinking now. I mean, right now, about where you're running your brackets this year. We are running our pools here at Locked On at runyourpool.com. They've got standard brackets and different game types like Survivor or Pick-X, a bunch of intel that you won't find at ESPN or CBS. We're running our brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test than that. If you want to play against us here at Locked On for a shot at a cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. While you're there, create your own pool for your friends and family. Enter code Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. This show also brought to you by Bet Online. Football might be over for the season, but basketball, it's in full steam for pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, as well as bets, of course. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net, your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. When that was still going on, they have just got everything up there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. So Oregon basketball season lives to see another day. They knock off the Beavs. And look, going into the game, I was actually kind of nervous. Not because I'm supremely confident Oregon could win the Pac-12 tournament and get to the big dance, which is, of course, what I still want to happen. And is it possible? Of course it is. It's March. Anything can happen in March. That's why they call it March Madness. You heard there on that Run Your Pool promo. Pure Madness code at checkout. Pure Madness, great code, because that's what March is. So there was not a lot of upside coming into this game for the Beavs, but there was a major downside. That's why I was nervous. The good news is that Oregon got off to a good start. They scored the first 11 points of the game, despite missing a lot of shots early. And when they came out cold from the floor, I just saw them shooting and thought, boy, this just feels familiar. I mean, the only constant in life is change, but Oregon going through cold stretches on offense, that's been a routine in my life as a fan for the last couple of weeks now. But they started the first, or they scored the first 12 points of the game at the first media timeout. It was 12-0. Then the Beavs responded. They hit a couple shots. I didn't think Oregon State was taking very good shots in that time. They just started to knock them down. Jared Lucas, a guy who can really microwave. He's got a jitterbug movement to him on the perimeter that allows him to spring himself free for jumpers, and he can really shoot it. Depending on what happens with this Oregon roster after this season, I'm just going to say I would not be opposed to getting Lucas in the portal. He can really score and shoot. He can be streaky, but so can basically everybody in college basketball. When he's hot, he is rolling along. One of the best free throw shooters and three-point shooters in the Pac-12 this year. But then the second half comes around, and, at the half, Oregon had a 7-point lead, and I was kind of like, okay, it's fine. It could be worse, but it should be better because they didn't have the great start, and then they went through a rough stretch on offense where they weren't taking good shots. Oregon's zone offense, if they're going to get through this tournament and win the whole thing, the zone offense has to be better. And part of it is Harmon and Young, and Guerrier does this sometimes as well. Richardson did, though Will Richardson didn't play in this game, and he's likely out for the tournament. He's, I think, been battling sort of concussion sickness, not entirely certain, but no Will Richardson. That's the bottom line. All those guys I just mentioned are very hesitant sometimes to catch and shoot the three. There are moments where I'm okay passing up a good shot to get a great shot, but there are times where you move the ball against the zone, you swing it to a guard who's a capable three-point shooter, you expect him to shoot it, and he instead pump fakes and lets the defense reset. Kind of drives me nuts because I think Young and Harmon are capable three-point shooters. Are they better in the mid-range? Yes, but against the zone, when you get a shot in rhythm, you have to have the confidence to shoot it. And that's what it tells me is neither is particularly confident with their three-point shot. And Oregon against the zone. I mean, if I'm every coach in the Pac-12 right now, I'm watching the last couple of weeks of Oregon's offense, how they struggle against the zone, and I'm running zone the entire game. Oregon State, when they went on that 14-3 run early in the game to get themselves back into it after allowing the first 12 points to the Ducks, they went zone. And then Oregon's offense slowed down, and they sort of adjusted as it went on, but the Ducks offense in this game was really all about transition. That's what it was. It was all transition offense. That is where the Ducks were absolutely killing the Beavs all game long. That's where the offense pulled away and allowed Oregon to win. I think 86-74 was the final score, but the Ducks had a comfortable win by the end, but it was not always comfortable, though the Ducks, really led most of the way. I don't think the Beavs, they might have had a lead at one point early in the first half, but the Ducks might have led the whole game. They felt in control, and they ended up winning by double digits, but they could have won. They could have won by more. I have to say, though, there was this guy who emerged in the second half. Well, really the whole game, frankly. I shouldn't say just the second half. It was the whole game. There was this guy who really came on strong for the Ducks. I hadn't seen him before. For those of you golfers out there, he reminded me a little bit of what we call player B. Player A hits a shot, messes it up. Player B, drop a ball out of your pocket, you hit another one, hit it perfect. Player B is really good. He is rarely making mistakes. And the guy who emerged in this game for the Ducks was share the ball first Jacob Young. Haven't seen him this year because he's primarily been an off-ball guard behind Will Richardson. I like this guy. I liked Jacob Young before, though he has had moments throughout the year where he's driven us a little crazy with bad shot selection or some bad turnovers. But I tell you what, when he's passing first and using that threat to set up his offensive game and attacking in transition, I tell you what, that was one of the three best guards in the Pac-12 conference we saw against the Beat. I don't care who you're playing. Oregon State finishes 3-28 this year, which they lost their final 18 games. Just dreadful, just absolutely dreadful after an Elite Eight season. Tough go of it for the Beavs. But high assist Jacob Young. I'm on board with this guy. I like him a lot. He was making better decisions. He was facilitating really well. He was scoring the ball efficiently. He finished with 23 points, career high 11 assists, one off a Pac-12 single game tournament record. He had 6 boards. He was 10 of 19 from the floor. Okay, no matter who Oregon's playing, if Jacob Young is putting up 23, 11, and 6 on 10 of 19, Ducks are going to have a great chance to win. Quincy Guerrier played well in this one, 20 points. He had a nice game on the interior. He was 3 of 7 from beyond the arc, which is good. That's about where he should be in terms of attempts and makes. But I like the way that he slashed, used his size to get inside, get to the rim, and get some easy buckets to get himself going. He had 20 points. They led the way for the Ducks. Eric Williams started for Will Richardson because we just have more lefties than we know what to do with. Like, how many other teams in college basketball have 4 lefties? Richardson, Young, Harmon, Williams. I mean, it's crazy. He had 14 points and 8 rebounds, so he did some nice things. And Folly Dante, man, I don't know if he's our best player on this team, but he's probably our most impactful. What have I said this year? When the bigs play, if Oregon is going to do what they have to down the stretch to get to the tournament, the bigs have to play well. Today was one of those games. Kepnang had a block. Wasn't the most effective game for Frank Kepnang, but it's usually one or the other. This was a Dante game. 15 points, 7 rebounds, 5 blocks. He had the exclamation point block at one end and then dunk at the other, or it was a dunk at one end and then a block at the other to shut down the Beavs with about a minute to go. It was a good performance from the Ducks. I won't say it was great because this Oregon State team is so bad, and they were lifeless early on. The Ducks looked like they would run away with it, but then let the Beavs back into it when really Oregon State had no business being in this game. Though there are really good individual performances here, it wasn't the all-around team is clicking, everything's going how it has to. This is a team that could get hot to win to the tournament kind of performance. So the 4th seed Colorado is up next. I don't feel that confident after this win. I really don't. Is it possible we beat them? Yeah, we've beaten them before in Colorado. Should have beaten them at home at Matthew Knight Arena. So they could. If they play the way they did against Oregon State, they could maybe squeak out a win. But early on, I think they have to make some more shots because, that 12-0 start was more a function of Oregon State being dreadful than it was Oregon being really good. There were a lot of things to like in this game, though. Right? Jacob Young, exceptional, got production from the wings. Rivaldo Soares had 8 points. That was really big. He had a 4-point play and a couple of buckets as well. Dante was just a huge presence, and oh my gosh, did he scare me in the second half. He went down. Soares accidentally rolled into him, looked like he was kind of grabbing his knee, and instead It was his ankle. He was okay, came back into the game, looked like his usual self, was just dominant throughout. That was huge because if Dante had gone down with an injury, all bets are off. Oregon is not going to do this. But the opportunity is there. We'll see how it goes. One day at a time. One down, 3 to go. Number 4 seed Colorado is up later today as this episode is dropping. I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.